Today is Mercy Sunday. The last week on Easter, St. Victor's Parish gave out a little book called Beautiful Mercy. If you didn't pick one up, do so after this Mass in the vestibule of the church. When Jesus appeared to the 11 in the upper room, the first thing that he said to them was peace. Then talked about forgiveness. And certainly that is related to mercy. And in the second reading, St. John in the book of Revelation, it speaks of heaven coming down on earth, the symbol of the temple in Jerusalem permeating the whole world, bringing about people in joy worshiping God. Mercy. And we see in the first reading from the Acts of the Apostles how St. Peter cared for the ill, cured them. Mercy. In the book called Beautiful Mercy, which is a collection of articles by Matthew Kelly, he begins in the prelude about stories. The story of the Marine returning from Iraq, wounded, almost destroyed, coming back to adjust to his family. He's so happy to have a loving wife and children. He prays for his comrades who are still in harm's way. And then he prays for those who set the explosions to almost destroy his life. That's mercy. He tells another story about a struggling couple trying to make ends meet. They sacrifice. They do not spend things on themselves. They save it for their children to buy necessities for them. Their 18-year-old daughter has a friend, a girlfriend, who is thrown out of her home, has no place to go. They take her in, welcome her as a member of their own family. That is mercy. A middle-aged man, one day out of the week, he gets up at 4 o'clock in the morning, kisses his wife, checks on his children, and then he goes off to the soup kitchen to serve those who are hungry. That's mercy. Matthew Kelly goes on to say in the prelude, the Catholic Church feeds more people, educates more people, visits more people and sick and takes care of them, clothes more people than any other institution in the world. That's mercy. He goes on to talk about how, in a way, his own life is broken, wounded, faulted in many ways, and limited. Yet he's amazed at how much he can love his children. And if he can love his children, how much more can God love his children, all of us? And that is mercy. Matthew Kelly, in introducing these different parts, also talks about different things in his own life. What if each of us were to spend one day doing one of the corporal works of mercy? What kind of a world it would be different? Now, those corporal works of mercy to feed the hungry, to give drink to the thirsty, to clothe the naked, to shelter the homeless, to visit the sick, to liberate those suffering from slavery or addictions, and also to pray or to bury the dead. Would our world be completely different if each of us could practice, if not one day out of the week, one particular corporal work of mercy? The first article in the book is from the Pope Francis. And of course he says the face of God is found in Jesus. And it's the face of mercy. The very mystery of the Holy Trinity is mercy. It's the center of our religion. We are to practice it. Oh, how important mercy is to all of us. The Pope goes on to say that Jesus showed us his works of mercy. He favored sinners. He favored the marginalized. He favored the poor. He favored those in a way who are suffering. The Pope goes on to say that Jesus not only forgave Matthew, the tax collector, but he chose him to be one of the apostles. With 2 loaves of bread and fish, he fed an enormous crowd that was hungry. With compassion and love, he raised from the dead the only son of a widow, so she'd have someone with her to take care of her. We have in the Gospels those parables. The prodigal son is the father representing God the Father, who goes out and welcomes his son back, throws his arms around him. We have the parable of the lost coin and the lost sheep, the great joy that Christ has in showing mercy. We see in today's gospel that Thomas has heard about the risen Christ, told by many of his fellow apostles, but he doesn't believe it quite himself. We find ourselves in a similar situation today. If we look at the world, there doesn't seem to be a chance of peace. There's terrorism around. There's corruption, dishonesty, lack of sincerity. How can there ever be peace? How can there ever be mercy? It's all left up to us to begin. To begin in our own families, in our own setting, in our own neighborhood. If we were to practice those corporal works of mercy, what a great difference there'd be. And then we have the spiritual works of mercy. Those spiritual works of educating those who are uninformed, to somehow to enlighten the sinner, to bear patiently difficulties in life, to forgive ourselves, to comfort the afflicted, to pray for the living and the dead. There is a genius about the Judeo-Christian tradition. Isaiah, 700 years before Christ, speaks of many of the corporal works of mercy and the spiritual works of mercy. It's unfortunate, perhaps, that in our lives we would examine our conscience according to the Ten Commandments. That's not bad, that's good. But can we go farther than that? Can we examine our lives according to the corporal works of mercy and the spiritual works of mercy? It's unfortunate that Catholicism is preached but not practiced so much. It really hasn't been tried. Remember that book by Matthew Keller, The Dynamic Catholic? That only 7% of Catholics really are dynamic, that really practice their faith. They practice their faith by praying at least 20 minutes a day, about studying about their religion and tradition 20 minutes a day, about evangelizing. Oh, how difficult that is for us to evangelize. Is it possible to evangelize in a way that's not going to offend anybody? By sharing a book with them? By telling someone about your own experience of how things turned out well for you and you attribute it to God in your life? Are those things going to offend somebody? If we preach those corporal works of mercy, to feed the hungry, to give drink to the thirsty, to clothe the naked, to provide shelter for the homeless, to visit the sick, to liberate those who are in some kind of slavery, is that going to upset people? Or are they going to say you're mixing up religion and politics or daily life? Are not the corporal works of mercy really the genius of the Judeo-Christian tradition? It doesn't just apply to Jews and Christians. It applies to everyone. And everyone could benefit from the corporal works of mercy.